Hello.
Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
You have enjoyed the Skype conversations?
Sure, I have.
Where did you study in America, by the way?
So I studied at Haverford College in Pennsylvania, about 20 minutes from Philadelphia, one of the states that we're looking at tonight.
Ah, I see.
Yes.
And you studied political science?
I did study political science.
What are the theories behind this American electoral system?
So these theories are very interesting. They were propounded by the founding fathers, saying that this, in order to have a fair system where people who are competent enough elect the president, they needed a specific group of people rather than leaving it to majority votes. It's interesting to note that these people that were chosen really excluded so many people. Women couldn't vote, black people couldn't vote. So that is where it started from, with the intention of preserving democracy. But as time has gone on, we see that there's a lot of changes in the social fabric, and voting isn't left for a specific group of people, you know.
But then, obviously, some people have a bigger say in the electoral process in America than others.
Correct.
Are there political theories that are being thought about to sort of change it? And what's the process of changing? How can it be changed?
Definitely. So one of the tensions that the American people are facing is that on one hand, this is enshrined in the Constitution. So nothing can be done within the political process that is unconstitutional. So the only thing that can be done by the American people is to push for an amendment of the Constitution in order to have a more representative voting structure. Because there have been a lot of calls, or the theories that are being discussed is that this system of governance, even though constitutional, is undemocratic. Because you just have a few group of people's voices being represented, while the majority isn't accurately represented. So we look at 2016, where Hillary Clinton wins the popular vote, but she doesn't go to the White House. And this is a clear case of an undemocratic
so that the majority of people in America voted for Hillary Clinton?
Yes, the popular vote. So she won the popular vote. But she came second? She came second. And it's one of those things that we ask ourselves, so what is the will of the people here? And if democracy is built on the voice of the people or the will of the people, what does this system do to our democracy? You know, so that's something that it's in the works. People are talking about it, thinking about it, and who knows? Maybe in a few years we'll see a change.
But is the Electoral College also not arranged on the basis of population size and all that? Because American states came together, they were not together, they came together. Correct. So if I'm Florida and I'm coming to join the United States of America, and I think I have a bigger states than Virginia, why must Florida and Virginia have the same voice in choosing the president, the federal Republican president?
Correct, definitely. So there are a lot of arguments that talk about that in fact is based on proportional representation. That certain states have bigger numbers, therefore it might make more sense for them to have a bigger say. But I do think personally that that kind of system was for a time where the unity or the identity of the American people wasn't based on a national identity, rather a regional identity. But as time has progressed, we see a national American identity. So the question is, are people more American than others? Because for certain people's voices and votes to be the key deciding factor, so like we see Florida, we see Pennsylvania, we see other places, does that make them more American than a state like maybe Georgia? You know, so that is a question that is on the minds of a lot of political scientists.
You think that is going to come to a head in case Donald Trump wins again tonight and loses the popular vote? You think that analysis is going to be the big deal for academics in all the universities and be writing about it? I
definitely think so. I definitely think so. And I mean, my thought or my political prediction is that it might go to the Supreme Court.
This election?
This election might go to the Supreme Court because it's so fiercely contested. And the weeks leading up to the election have seen the calls of voter intimidation, amongst other things. So, and people are beginning to think that if it goes to the Supreme Court with the recent nomination of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, how does that affect the decision that the Supreme Court would come to? Because obviously she was chosen by President Donald Trump. So these are the things that a lot of people are thinking and talking about. But
I can agree with you that it's going to go to the Supreme Court, because from what Courtney told us from New York, ballots are not going to be counted.
Exactly.
And they'll start counting them from tomorrow.
Exactly.
So they're going to count those who voted today.
Right.
But quite clearly, we have to wait for the voter turnout. But if the voter turnout is even 160 million,
Right.
it means that the earlier ballots will be more.
Exactly.
So those that have voted today, whose results we will know, is the fewer ballots.
Right. Correct.
So you have to wait for the bigger ballot. And President
Exactly.
Trump has already said, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled against the drive-through ballot,
Yep.
that it was a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
So somebody is going to take out a writ at the federal Supreme Court to make a decision across the country
Right.
whether those ballots should be counted.
Should be counted. And that is the contention, because we have certain states also pushing for phone ballots, amongst other things. So now the question to the Supreme Court would be, what is the right way, or what is the most democratic way, or actually what is the most constitutional way to cast the ballots? And because we see the plurality of avenues for casting ballots, that question would be in the balance. And because of things like COVID, we see more people voting earlier, we see more people using alternative ways to vote rather than the traditional in-person voting. So that is what people are thinking about, that is what people are talking about. And of course, if President Trump is re-elected, there's a lot of implications, even for foreign policy. That is something I think about a lot. You know,
a lot of you young people who are studying American university don't like President Trump.
Right.
What's the point?
What's the point? Why don't we like President Trump?
Yeah.
I think the thing boils down to immigration, the question of immigration, because we go there to get exposure, to get a better education, but we've seen progressively a tightening of immigration policies to prevent people from coming into the States on the claim or on the basis that people who are coming in are taking the jobs of the Americans, amongst other things. So there is a widespread fear that if President Trump should be re-elected, there's something called the OPT, which gives international students the chance to work for a certain number of years in the States after their school. And there's a fear that this OPT will be taken away. And it's one of those things that is very concerning, because a lot of international students contribute financially to the economy of America. We see that a lot of organizations and corporations have the driving force are internationals. So the question is, we contribute so much to the American economy, and if we're being treated like this, what is the point? And for me, that raises questions about Pan-Africanism. That why don't we focus on back home, building and contributing and investing back home, than pouring into someone else's country?
What about religion? Is that not something on the mind of the youth? Religion, LGBTQ, is that not something that sort of matters in making the choices? Or majority of you university people, you agree with LGBTQ, which is what Trump seems to be against, and religion, which is what Trump seems to stand for on a fierce evangelical platform,
right,
as opposed to plurality in religion. Is that also forming part of the decision-making of young people?
For young people, I don't know how much, just speaking broadly, I don't know how much religion plays a part in their decision-making. We see a rise in a very pluralistic environment, especially in the United States. So maybe religion isn't as key a determining factor amongst the young people than old people, but definitely the rights of the woman, the rights of sexual minorities, and the rights of racial minorities is something that is on top of the list.
Who are sexual minorities?
Sexual minorities are the LGBTQ community, so lesbian, gays, bisexuals, transgender, and we see that there is so much talk about this in the United States. And with matters relating to the Supreme Court and same-sex civil unions, that is something that is really on the front burner. And we see Joe Biden advocating for the rights of sexual minorities, of which many young people actually subscribe to. So we see the tide turning there, whereas President Trump has a more, people describe it as a more conservative approach to these issues. And I think the racial tension for me as a black man who lived in America is something that is at the forefront of this political debate, because we are constantly seeing the death of black people in America. About 2 weeks ago, or maybe a week and a half ago, right in my area in Philadelphia, a man called Walter Wallace, I think he was 27, he was shot and killed. By the police? By the police. He had a knife, but he was mentally challenged. And an ambulance was called and the police came in. So he was approaching the police with a knife. This is a mentally ill person. There was a variety.
Was he brandishing the knife?
Yes.
Okay.
But the video,
so that's threatening.
So that was threatening.
Yeah.
And of course, there was an issue with that. But to kill or to take away a life, there's an issue with that. And this doesn't come as an isolated event. We see the stories of people like Breonna Taylor, who was killed in her bedroom. We see the stories of George Floyd, who was killed on the streets, you know, and the question becomes, what is the value of the black life in America? A lot of international students are asking that, do we have a place here? Is this a place for us? Can I be shot and killed? Would I be the next hashtag? These are questions that are on the minds of young voters, you know.
But on the black issue, and I've followed the campaign, and Donald Trump believes that he's done more for black people, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln.
Correct.
Obviously referring to the abolition of slave trade.
Right.
That he has done more for black people than any other president. He also cites Joe Biden's history in Congress, where he voted for that bill that said black people were dangerous predators.
Correct.
Something like that.
Correct.
So why will young, either African Americans or immigrants, Americans from Africa and other parts of the world, believe that Joe Biden is the choice on black issues other than Trump?
The thing about it is, I don't believe that there are any sort of angels in this situation. We have two elderly white men fighting for the vote of black people and presenting themselves as saviors of black people. One saying that he's been a savior, he's been the best thing that has happened to black people since Abraham Lincoln, and another one who calls himself black, or who called himself black. So the point is not that one is an angel and one is a devil, but who has less blood on their hands, so to speak. So we see that when there were white supremacist riots, the President Donald Trump, couldn't come out and condemn these white supremacists. We see very recently when the Proud Boys, I believe in, maybe I'm wrong about this, but Charlottesville, something like that. But when the Proud Boys, a white supremacist organization, comes out at a peaceful protest organized by supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement, he tells them to stand by. And it's concerning that for a country that black people are so integral and have been so fundamental to the history and the development, we are still grappling over these issues. So it's, for me, it's the better of two evils, so to speak.
From the narrative that you posit, Elorm, shouldn't we then be placing the entire problem on the shoulders of Barack Obama? This was a black person who ascended to the highest office of the land. He was there for 2 terms, 8 years. He could have changed everything. It appears that he changed nothing.
Right.
Is that the verdict?
So it's difficult to say that he changed nothing. He definitely did something for the black population in America. However, it is important to realize that the racial tension that America is experiencing today comes on the back of years and years of systemic and institutionalized racism, where black people are not allowed, we're not allowed, and still in many communities are not allowed to borrow money. We see that black communities are disenfranchised in many ways, the school system, the housing system. So for me, 8 years doesn't do too much. 8 years sets the groundwork for other people to continue. So to see a break in that, so we see Obama 8 years and then President Trump comes, it's almost like a reversal of all the work that has been done. And you know, healthcare is also a big issue in this election. With President Trump is talking about repealing Obamacare, and if Obamacare is repealed, people with underlying health conditions are at risk. Young people above the age of 26, I believe, cannot stay on their parents' insurance. And this is a big issue, especially now that we are in a global pandemic. Things are so uncertain. People are losing jobs, and healthcare is very essential and crucial. The conversation on healthcare policy is very essential, you know.
Okay. Let's look at Barack Obama. Presented his campaign to Joe Biden 2 days ago in a very sexy way. He sat behind a phone and made a phone call to people and urged them to vote for Barack Obama and urged them to vote for Joe Biden. Have a look at this. Barack Obama still has a lot of sense of humor and a lot of likability in America. This is Barack Obama campaigning for Joe Biden.
Hello?
Hi, is this Alyssa?
It is. Hey, Alyssa, this is Barack Obama. I used to be the president, you remember?
Yes.
So I am doing phone banking for Joe Biden, and you're one of the people I'm calling.
Oh my God.
How are you doing?
I'm having a panic.
Don't, uh-oh. All I want to do is to remind you that Election Day is Tuesday, and this is going to be a really close election, and I'd love for you to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala, and if you don't know your polling location, I can give it to you and give you any information that you need.
I will be there, and I am so excited to vote for them. I can't wait.
Well, that's great. And make sure, are you reaching out to family and friends and all that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, you tell them Barack specifically asked them to please vote.
Oh, I will tell everybody that you told me to tell them.
Who's that in the background there?
This is Jackson. He's 8 months old.
8 months old, so you've got a new guy in the house.
I have a new guy. Yes, I do.
Well, he sounds like he is either hungry, needs his diaper changed, or just doesn't like mom giving attention to somebody else.
He's like, when I go into phone calls and meetings, he immediately starts talking. I think he just wants to talk.
Well, that may be it. If you want to put him on the phone, I'm happy to talk to him. Hey, Jax, what's going on, man?
You say hi, Jackson?
Hi. Do what your mom says. I would chat for you for quite some time, but when you have 8 months old, you can't be on the phone too long.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for calling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that's Barack Obama. Certainly Barack Obama still has it, doesn't he?
Yep.
He does. Okay,
Yep.
so what's your verdict of what's going to happen tonight? Biden's going to win?
You know, that's what the polls are saying. Mm-hmm. The polls said something similar in 2016, that Clinton was going to win. But the fact remains that we're not sure. Until all the votes are counted, we will never be sure.
And in this case, all the votes will not be counted tonight?
I doubt the votes will be counted tonight.
But you predict that this is going to end up in the Supreme Court?
I think it might end up in the Supreme Court. Because
but if it does, the Republicans have 6, the Democrats have 3.
My interpretation of Supreme Court issues are based largely on judicial philosophy as opposed to conservative / progressive or Republican / Democrat. But I'm hoping that if it ends up in the Supreme Court makes the decision that is best for America. Because the thing about it is that we're living in a time where we're seeing the fall in liberal democracy all over the world. So the world is watching America and what America would do and how America will act. And already America is losing points on the world stage. So this is sort of like theater for the world to see what America is going to do. And it will impact the way the rest of the world interprets democracy. They say that when America gets a cough, when America sneezes, the whole world gets a cough. So.
But in doing so, the Supreme Court would have some precedents to deal with. And in the year 2000, the decision was taken by the court that stopped the counting. 10,000 votes more were to be counted for Al Gore. He believed he was going to win because they were from Democratic stronghold counties that were coming out of Florida. And he thought he was going to win, and George Bush was leading by less than 10,000. And the Supreme Court said, stop the counting.
Correct.
Now, if whatever is going to go to the court will be of that nature, it will be ballots that have come in early, postal ballots and absentee ballots. And Donald Trump is already leading in Pennsylvania, Florida, wherever. And they're going to ask the Supreme Court to ask them to stop the counting. So there's precedent. I
do acknowledge the issue of stare decisis precedent.
Yeah.
And that becomes a difficult question for us to answer. 2000 is vastly different from 2020.
Yes, absolutely.
So
20
years have passed, and I do think the interpretation of law doesn't change, but it becomes more expansive. So with the political climate and what is going on now with the increase in technology, and to talk about the COVID global pandemic, I do believe the Supreme Court justices would have all this in mind when making the decision. But we keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best.
So if Trump doesn't win, where does he go from here?
That's a difficult question to answer because I can't even imagine. After all this, after so much bickering in the White House and living such an unprecedented presidential legacy, I don't know what's.
If Biden doesn't win, what happens to the Democratic Party?
You know, we don't want to think about that. But something I know is that regardless of what happens in this election, young people have seen that we are able to affect the future of nations. I call this the decade of the young person. From EndSARS in Nigeria to the Black Lives Movement in America, young people have been at the forefront.
Even from the Arab Spring.
Exactly, in making our voices heard. So regardless of how the election goes, I'm confident that we're seeing a generation of young people who know that we can change the world by our voices. And I hope that the voice of young people, wherever we find ourselves, will never be silenced.
And we say thanks to Mark Zuckerberg for that, don't we?
Yep.